Hello, Namaste. A very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Ramya Dwivedi, Senior Scientist at International Center for Clean Water, ICCW, an initiative of IIT Madras. One of the important initiatives of ICCW is outreach. Today, as part of this outreach program, I'm delighted to have you join us for our webinar on innovation during and after the pandemic. It is now my privilege to introduce the moderator for the evening, Professor T. Pradeep. Professor T. Pradeep is an institute professor and Deepak Parekh Institute Chair Professor and Professor of Chemistry, IIT Madras, and he is the professor in charge of International Center for Clean Water. The water technologies from his lab has impacted over 10 million people across the country. We also know him as an author, editor, teacher, and a philosopher. I request him to introduce the event and conduct him. Over to you, Professor.
Welcome to this meeting. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. I'm sure that all of us have been thinking about the impact of the pandemic on innovation. We thought that it is necessary to discuss this issue with the very best people in the country, probably across the world, to know their thoughts. The moment I expressed our desire to have such a meeting, Dr. Raghunathanand Mashelkar, as typical of him, accepted the request in just a flash. Great idea, his email said. Then I contacted my big brother, Professor Anil Kumar Gupta. He too agreed instantly. Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala, my senior colleague and elder brother, whom I look up to for motivation, agreed with lightning speed. And the plan for this meeting was set. Thank you for joining this exciting, energizing session. In my view, first and foremost, this will be a great opportunity for the young who are deeply distressed by being confined at home and with reduced opportunities and resources. Well, we may agree or disagree, but the fact remains that the educated young of the country and world over feel that their opportunities have been snatched away suddenly. But then there are many who are unwilling to take it as destiny, and they are resilient, and news about such people appear every day across the country and the world. Indeed, it is highly motivating. However, for every such story, there are many failures as well. Many businesses have been shut. I have personal knowledge of several. For some, it is impossible to recover, and they have shut their shops permanently. Hope, of course, for everyone is innovation. The human spirit to come out and climb over obstacles will triumph, and world will be back again and kicking. That joyous world will be directed by new innovations. Where there are more and better of those, revival will be faster and better. Innovation expresses the desire of a society to advance. Every advancing society, therefore, has innovated. And where innovations excelled, advances have been rapid. Be it in scientific creativity or art or music, innovation advances societies. What will be the impact of COVID-19 on the trajectory of innovation? How can we ensure a resilient innovation ecosystem? How can we ensure that innovation continues at the grassroots? What would be the directions for academic institutions for being the torchbearers of innovation? We will discuss all these today. Every calamity needs resources to overcome its impact. In the process, the most affected is research. The budget gets cut first on projects. Can India afford to cut its expenses on research when there are over 930 plus universities engaged in research and when the aspiring young want to accomplish more? Tomorrow's graduates have to be job creators, as the Prime Minister says. What would be the innovation ecosystem in educational institutions be to enable this vision. To speak about these and more, we have the very best people that India can have. I'm not sure how to introduce them completely or fully in the time that I have. But then, therefore, I chose just to make some slides about them. And therefore, I'm not going to introduce these giant men in detail. Indeed, we will have just that one slide that I told you. These slides will appear just before their lecture. I must tell you, for me, I have kept them at high esteem for all these years, the years I have been in science. I have been fortunate to know them for some years. They're all gems. Apart from what they are, which you will see in these slides, they're all fine, compassionate, committed, and charismatic people. Let me say just this much. With a few more people like them, world will be a better place. I will not take time to introduce again. Instead, we will use the time for questions. Therefore, please get ready with questions. We will have their presentations one after another. Each of them will have take about 30 minutes. And at the end, we will have about 20 minutes for questions. You may write your name and questions in brief in the chat box. We will get started with Dr. Raghunath Anand Mashelkar. He is a champion of inclusive innovation. For him, true inclusive innovation should bring a smile on the face of each citizen of the world, not just a privileged few. In fact, he has been working hard on this theme for many, many years. Sir, we will get started. I will give you a warning just 5 minutes before the deadline.
Right.
Thank you, and let us listen to the doyen of innovation.
Okay. So thank you very much, Pradeep, for this invitation. And so fantastic to join Ashok, Anil, Pradeep, yourself. We just saw fantastic film on what you have been able to achieve. I've been a great admirer of yours for a long time indeed. Innovation unplugged towards a crisis-resilient innovation ecosystem. This fantastic title was not designed by me, it was designed by you. And you said, Dr. Mashelkar, just speak on this. So that's what I'm going to do. You also made a very important change where you said not crisis as CRISIS, but crisis, CRISES. That was very meaningful because it's not just this pandemic, but there will be pandemics, there will be so many other events that will keep on coming, and we have to rise to that. As a scientist, I would say science, technology, and innovation, that's going to be critical in everything that we do. Science that solves, technology that transforms, and innovation that impacts. And even before starting my presentation, I must say our entire community, science, technology, and innovation community, has really done us proud. You know, when the pandemic hit us, we had no test methods, we had no therapeutics, we had the ventilators were importing, the PPEs, the personal protection equipment were importing. There was a challenge on everything, including diagnostics. And if you just take a snapshot 4 months ago and now, it is absolutely incredible the way our system has been able to sort of rise. So I'm very proud of our science, technology, and innovation ecosystem. What I'm going to focus on in this lecture, or this talk, is my own understanding of what constitutes crisis resilience. Now, if you look at COVID-19, it is called the Black Swan event of the century. It has meant a significant setback for world's ambition to achieve the sustainable development goals, and particularly developing countries in each of these 17, excepting there is a saving grace that the reduction in environmental impact resulting from decline in human activity. But what will happen is that once the human activity starts, do we go back to the same word with which we began? I mean, we talk about recovery. To me, economic recovery is a must, but do we go back to the recovery of the same word with gray skies and gray rivers, or the blue Yamunas of this world and the blue skies that we see in Delhi? I think that is going to be the big question. But the basic issue is that all the sustainable development goals have been hit enormously. Years of gain have eroded in days. For example, the biggest job crisis post World War I, 400 million jobs lost in Q2 globally, 130 million in India. The healthcare systems in many developing countries are on the brink of collapse. The worst recession faces us since the Great Depression of 1930s. $9 trillion have been lost globally. 1.6 billion children have been out of school. And what worries me is the future. 16% kids' future is at risk because they have missed mandatory vaccination. And I read a chilling headline today: every 15 seconds, a global citizen is dying today. That's absolutely terrible. But I must say, Pradeep, what is equally disturbing is that there is a great similarity between climate change that we are looking at, or the climate shock, and the pandemic. For example, both are physical. There is an array of socio-economic impact. Both are systemic. There is a knockout effect. It propagates fast across interconnected world. Both are non-linear. Socio-economic impact grows absolutely non-linearly. Both are risk multipliers. The untested vulnerabilities in healthcare systems have got exposed like never before. Both are regressive. Most untenable population gets most affected, like the migrant laborers. We have seen the, one could not sleep, seeing children walk, their grandmothers walk, pregnant women walk sort of kilometers. And therefore, I would like to begin by saying that beside these numbers that you see, there is something more. I think the current pandemic provides a trailer, if I may put it, of what will happen if a full-fledged climate crisis would entail. Huge disruption on demand side, as we have seen, huge disruptions on supply side, as we have seen, and huge spreads of global transmission, global amplification. So I believe that we have had a signal on what is likely to happen, and we have to gear up. That's the big picture. I mean, numbers are there to see, but I think we must not miss the big picture. The other is that inequalities have amplified. You see the bottom curve, which was the pre-COVID projection on how inequalities are coming down. And you can just see the April, June projections, and July and August will be even worse. And World Bank says that COVID-19 would push 100 million people into extreme poverty. As you know, extreme poverty is the people who are living less than $1.9 per day. All right. So years of work has gone waste, and we are restarting. Now, while all this bad news, there is certainly some good news. Like, for example, Satya Nadella said on the other day that we have seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in 2 months. 2 years in 2 months. Telemedicine, for example, somebody has said 10 years of change has taken place in 1 week. And if you see the curve on your right, the graph, the US e-commerce penetration, it was growing linearly, and suddenly in 3 months, it has grown non-linearly. And therefore, home has changed its character, work from home. School has changed its character, school at home, the entertainment at home. And the entire transformation is absolutely incredible because it is both rapid, has not given you early warning, and is massive. Now, if you see the crisis-resilient ecosystem, the topic that Pradeep wants me to talk to, we have to look at several crises. So first is geopolitical crisis. You know, we had world wars Now, war of words is, of course, continuing, but there is a US-China trade war, technology war. Wars have taken different shape that cause geopolitical crisis. There are economic slowdowns and even meltdowns, like 2008 was an actual meltdown, and we have had them again. Natural calamities, cyclones, tsunamis, floods, and we keep on seeing them. The climate crisis we are seeing, drought, wildfire, rising sea levels, and the pandemics, SARS, swine flu, and the worst of them all, COVID-19. So therefore, when we list out several qualities of leadership, one of the most critical one is going to be building resilience and what kind of leadership will require, and I will touch upon that a little later. Now, I want to say straight away, not because I'm fond of innovation. I've always said I in India must stand for innovation, I in every individual must stand for innovation, etc., etc. But innovation is critical because when you are down and out, you are looking at restarting, rebuilding, recovering, and you will start recovering, of course, slowly. In fact, return of capital will become more important than return on capital. People will be so conscious, and you will be so conscious that global supply chains are getting affected. So you will say just in time will give away to just in case because you want to sort of stock. Building to last will change to building to adapt, for example. So there are going to be dramatic shifts, but innovation is the key. And this graph actually shows to you the normalized market capitalization and the impact that innovation has had. Not only through the crisis, the innovators outperformed, as you can see, the 10% gap, but they also outperformed the market in 30% in post-crisis years. So like an old Japanese gentleman that I had met, he had said, when in crisis, we think. So my friends, we have to think. When in crisis, we have to think and keeping an eye on the road. Now, I am fascinated by biology, and biology teaches a lot, as a matter of fact. And to begin with, I would say the greatest example of resilience is really inspired by biology, because biological systems offer very valuable lessons on how to manage under extreme uncertainty. For example, it teaches us redundancy. There is a duplication of elements. There is something to always fall back on. Second is heterogeneity. There are different types of elements, contract types, factory types, locations. There's a modularity. There are separate modules, not all interconnected, like subsidiaries, plants. They're loosely linked and they can act like circuit breakers. Otherwise, the fire spreads all over. I just saw the design of a new hotel where even if one floor is on fire, the rest of the floors don't get affected at all. I just saw a movie about 4 or 5 days ago. The adaptation, rapid adjustment to new circumstances, very, very important. And embeddedness. Most systems are embedded within larger systems. So I think it is worth looking at biology as a great teacher. I mean, there is a huge literature and, of course, huge experience. I also like to talk from not the books that you see behind me here, but book of my own life. So I'm going to put in a lot of lessons from my own life also. But I have summarized some 30, 40, 50 lessons that we have just into 10 most important ones. And I'm going to go through them. First is adaptability. Second, agility. Third is resilience thinking. Thinking has to come. Resilient thinking has to be inbuilt. Then scenario-based planning, purpose-driven. Then platformization, digitalization and making digital ready end-to-end. Then fostering self-disruption. 9, climate. Again, I have referred to it earlier, but that is very essential. And finally, autonomous innovation. And what I will do is that I'll go through all these 10 in the 30 minutes that have been given to me, illustrating each one of them with an example, hopefully from my own book of life. The first is adaptability. The best strategy is when the business environment is hard to predict and shape. So when you talk about strategies, there's a classical strategy of just being big, so big that you can't shake up. So that is, then there is adaptive strategy. You want to be fast. Then there is a visionary strategy where you want to be the first. And then there is a renewal. But if you see over a period of time, companies that have survived, and I like to give always an Indian example, not just the foreign examples, we can keep on talking about them. Look at our TCS, for example. It grew from $155 million in 1996 to $21 billion. But they always followed a strategy which adopts shifts in technology, customer needs, and business environment. Always adopting. If you look at Spanish retailer like Zara, for example, it does not rely heavily on formal planning process. Its strategic style is based on flexible supply chains, and it is incredible the way basically that they move. So literature is replete with examples of adaptability, and that is going to be most important. The second is agility, the speed at which you do things. My friend Nawa from Israel just pointed out to me because we were in another meeting which I chair on sustainable development systems, and she at that time told me about this example and sent me the details. So I'm showing you this. An open source ventilator they developed in just 13 days at 1% of the cost of high-end ventilators. And who was agile? Not a single individual. They got 40 Israeli collaborators, techies, first responders, hospitals, the defense contractors, and they developed ventilator from scratch. And later they released the source code to make it user-friendly. And these Ambovent's blueprints have been downloaded 40,000 times. But let me keep the promise of giving you an Indian example. Right here in Pune, I'm very happy to say, my lab's patho-detect COVID-19 qualitative PCR kit. They studied the genome sequence, and within 6 weeks, I'm very proud to say, they created the kit. And I want to specially point out this lady. She was pregnant while she was working. She was the R&D chief. And she made sure they submitted the kit for evaluation just a day before delivering her daughter, by the way. She submitted that and went to the hospital. That is the Indian spirit, by the way. I'm very, very proud to see that. So that is agility. Then there is a resilience thinking. There is a very interesting story when Dhirubhai Ambani was to start his refinery. The consultants came and they said, for what type of crude you would like to design your refinery end to end? Because as chemical engineers, we know what kind of operations are involved, distillation, extraction, this, that, and the other. They said, I don't know what kind of crude I'm going to have. So they said, you must be joking. You must tell us the crude. He said, no, design my refinery that can handle every type of crude. And they designed it that Reliance handles 135 types of crudes today, from dirtiest to best, actually, out of 250 that are available. And interestingly, he said, when he began, I had dreams of starting a company like Burma Shell, but his son has done better. Reliance overtakes Exxon to become world's #2 energy firm is something that has happened 2 weeks ago. Why? Because they built a resilient refinery. In fact, when we are looking at global supply chain disruptions, you can see an example set up 30 years ago where it did not matter where the supplies came from, basically, as you can quite clearly see. And of course, we build it. Like I'm on the Thermax board, and I remember our building boilers where they can take any kind of feed, by the way, of any quality and any type. So I think this is a must. That is the third. The fourth is scenario-based planning. And the best example there is Shell. They have been there for 100 years. They operate in 100 countries. They are operating in 14 sectors. And if you see the Fortune global ranking of Shell, they have been always in the top 10. 95-10, 2009 1, and 2019 3. Because they have this scenario planning. For example, global supply model. Find out the scenarios that explore future oil and gas production till 2100. Then world energy model. Find out world energy model that will project scenarios until 2001, 100. So I think this is a very critical factor. And Shell has been developing possible visions since early 1970s. And no doubt, no wonder that they responded faster than any other companies by virtue of its sensitivity challenges, climate change, rise of China, etc. Then one has to be purpose driven. We know what we sell. We know how we do it. But why do we exist? What is the main purpose of an institution, of a nation, of a society? You have to know that. And it has been shown that the purpose-driven companies outperform S&P 500 by 10x times. Then employees within with a strong sense of purpose at least are 4x more likely to be engaged. Our own experience, Indian example, I have been chairman of Reliance Innovation Council for 2007. And I remember having a meeting with Mukesh in 2008 when the meltdown took place. And we created what is called as a Mission Kurukshetra, by the way, where every employee will get engaged. And the mantra was extreme efficiency, value maximization, war on waste. And there was a collective intelligence, collective imagination that was used to get out where every employee became important. We had web-driven systems, for example. So once everybody aligns with the purpose, the things can really happen. You become resilient. The sixth trend is platformization. And as you can see, the top global companies by market capitalization, if you see 2009 and 2019, out of the top 10, only Microsoft and Alphabet have survived, and their platform technologies. And platforms power the world's most valuable companies. But again, the Indian example, Jio platform, for example, has created history. RIL jumped, and you can see all the platforms here. It jumped 47 places in 3 months to 51st most valued company. And this is an old news, by the way. Now they are 46th. They are already among the top 50 because they are a platform technology-based company, as you can see from this slide. The seventh is digital transformation. I always say the new word is going to be dictated by digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization. And they're all interlinked. Now, digitalization is a must. And you can see accelerating end-to-end digitalization as far as customer experience is concerned, productivity, flexibility. And if you can see here, there is an analysis that McKinsey Lighthouse has done, which shows how digitalization can impact productivity, sustainability, agility, speed to market, customization, etc. And as you can see, the speed to market reduction, massive, productivity increase, massive. And therefore, digital way of thinking, digital way of life, and digital way of doing is going to be very critical for becoming resilient. In fact, very frankly, it is digitalization which has saved the world today. Work from home would have been impossible. Schooling from home would have been impossible. Home deliveries would have been impossible, as you can see. The eighth, I would say, is fostering self-disruption. As Sony chairman had said, we believe in replacing our own products ourselves, otherwise our competitors will do for us. So forgetting the past, managing the present, and creating the future, inventing new business models, new products, continuous innovation is going to be the key for being resilient. I must say here how critical this is by giving later on some examples. And I already talked about the climate issue. I've already told you what difference it is going to make. And I'm very happy to see companies after companies coming out and declaring will be carbon negative by 2030, 2035, etc. The electric vehicle markets, I'm very happy to see whether it was Renault, BMW, Hyundai, Toyota, even US companies. Deep in the midst of coronavirus, they have actually stuck to the new energy vehicles because one is very sort of clear about where the future lies. And the last one, and here the master himself is going to speak, that is Professor Anil Gupta. But I would say that vital as communities are primary responders to crisis. You know, this is innovation by the people for the people. Like, for example, this amphibious bicycle which runs on water. This was just made in 3 days by Mohammad Saidullah to tackle the floodwater crisis, by the way. He didn't wait for anybody else. And of course, there are some romantic videos on him, which you can see. But you can see here, he's transferring the children from one end to the other. And, you know, to the National Innovation Foundation, we give these awards. Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam is giving an award to Mohammad Saidullah. And you can see Anil there. Anil, you have lots of black hair there, by the way. So it's a long, long time indeed. But I think you will have a full-fledged presentation on this in terms of people's innovation. So these are my 10 mantras, I would say, that I have learned myself from Book of My Own Life, other book. I'd like to end in the next 10 minutes very quickly going through the fact that all these 10 resilient tenets, they can collapse into a single assured framework. Because you will say, my goodness, you have studied all the international literatures, you have studied HBR, and you have read all the strategy management books, and you are giving us something. I'm sorry. All this wisdom I can encapsulate in what is called as assured. And Pradeep is nodding because he has used the assured framework earlier. And I'll tell you, take you through this in the next 5 minutes. This is given in this book, Leapfrogging to Pole Vaulting, that I and my colleague Ravi Pandit read. And Ratan Tata in his remarks said, this captivating book through its impressive assured innovation framework shows the way forward for achieving this daunting task. Assured innovation framework is what he referred to. And I'm very happy to say that we're lucky to get 2019, the book was published and we got the best business book of the year award. Not bad. Me and Ravi Pandit there are smiling and very sort of happy. I'm a scientist as in an accountant, so getting best business book of the year is not bad at all. So we must have said something sensible. But one of the sensible things is our chapter 3, which talks about the assured, affordable, scalable, sustainable, universal, rapid, excellent, and distinctive. These are the features, basically. And each of these can be quantified. And here I've listed this assured matrix of evaluation of resilience of certain companies, which have great success at one point in time. Napster, BlackBerry, Palm Pilot, Betamax, Netscape, Segway, etc., etc. And they were not resilient. They all died. Why? Because in the assured framework, you can see, and the book gives the details on how some of these letters just fell off and they don't exist today. So therefore, lots of lessons on using such frameworks. Let us just pick up the top two, Napster as well as BlackBerry, because I won't have time to go through all this. Now, Napster, for example, it was affordable because you could download the music for nothing, zero. Scalable, obviously, everybody wants free things, so there were 80 million users. But are they existing today? No, because they were not sustainable. Why? The society. Society of musicians said, you can't download my music free, and they were gone. Okay, so this is a characteristic. Yeah, you look at the assured story of BlackBerry, for example. All right, where did they fail? For example, they were very happy typing out on their keyboard when you had already got to the touch. A smartphone had come, iOS, a whole range of things have come. They did not keep with it. Look at Google Glass, for example. It was distinctive, it was excellent. But was it affordable? No, it was very expensive. Was it user-friendly? No, people were suspicious when you wore it. Are you recording the conversation? If you go into a movie theater, are you recording the movie? You didn't know. It doesn't exist. But look at Geo, for example. It is affordable. I mean, where will you have a free voice call and 5 rupees per GB? Scalable, yes, 400 million customers. Sustainable, yes, the most profitable company. User-friendly, yes, you can see these two ladies using that company. Rapid, yes, they created 50 million customers in 83 days, which is a world record. They surpassed 2 years record of Facebook. Excellence, yes, 4G LTE, and distinctive, yes. Okay, so this is the matrix. The Swachh Bharat so-called Mashelkar committee, as they call it, which is a technology expert committee, has used it. For example, NIRI has used the assured framework to talk about affordability, scalability, sustainability, universality, rapidity, excellence, and distinctive. I'm not going to go through each of the parameters. And that is how all technologies were screened, including the fantastic technology that just now Pradeep described. And it was 5 out of 5 in everything that it did. I'm very happy to see that it is going across the ecosystem now in terms of research institutes, startups, SMEs, corporates, investors, etc., etc. I'm very happy to see its use getting spread for looking at several things. There is an enterprise, assured enterprise year of the award. Bombay Management Association has created it this year. So I'm very happy to see Baiju won this, by the way. And this was Baiju's assured matrix, by the way. It's not 5 out of 5 everywhere. He has to go a long way in completing that. And we gave him the award in January, and his valuation jumped from $8 billion to $10.5 million. I'm not saying because we gave the award, but it proved that we had chosen the right winner, and that's basically what it is. I would finally end, I have just 2 more slides. I will say that I'm very happy that this assured resilience spirit is going across to our startup, young startup, because that's what I'm interested in. They represent the future. And getting assured resilience spirit, this is a startup wearing the T-shirt, wearing that. Are you sure you are assured today? Is the question everybody asks to be resilient. This is my penultimate slide. I want to assure you that resilient pursuit of excellence can be done despite pandemic, because a lot of us are today depressed. But I want to give this brilliant example just to tell you. This is a quote from a book that was sent to me. England saw its last major outbreak of bubonic plague in 1665-66. As a precautionary measure, the students at Cambridge University, including young Newton, were sent home till the following year, just as our students are at home. What did he do? He spent his enforced vacation working on ideas underlying his spectacular accomplishments. Can you imagine? 1, gravitation, which came during the pandemic time. 2, laws of motion came during the pandemic time. 3, calculus came during the pandemic time. And optics came during the pandemic time. So here is a nice quote. Nature and nature's laws lay hidden night. God said, let Newton be, and all was light. This is what Alexander Pope said. So my friends, it's the human spirit, as Pradeep earlier said, will actually come out of it. My last slide is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Our Prime Minister has given us a challenge of creating an Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have to do with Atmavishwas. We have to do with Atmasanman. And I believe this can be done by building this assured resilience that we have talked about. Again, thank you, Pradeep, for giving this opportunity. This is my 30th moment, 30th minute. Thank you.
Fantastic, fantastic. What a wonderful vision that you presented. You finished in 30 minutes, 4 seconds. And that is one of the parameters in the assured matrix as well. Very nice, very nice. Of course, there are miles to go. We have miles to go to reach there. And for that, our education, our institutional system has to get ready. For every innovation to be assured, every organization to be assured, every Indian to be delivering on his promises, or his and her promises. There's a long way to go. The next speaker we have is Professor Anil Kumar Gupta. Again, he needs no introduction. Dr. Mashelkar already introduced him as a doyen of grassroots innovation. This book that I'm having, so I hope, no, you might not be able to see this, but this book is the book of grassroots innovation of Kumar Gupta. I would like you to read. Anil Gupta is the next speaker, the doyen of grassroots innovation. And here is his great book, which I enjoyed reading. Please read this book and get to know about him and the path he traveled. And he will take you through this book to the nooks and corners of the country. Now he is going to talk to us on innovations for and from grassroots. Professor Anil Gupta, I will give you a warning 5 minutes before the dead end.
Thank you very much. After an inspiring, very interesting, and very instigating presentation by Professor Mashelkar, My task is difficult, but I will try to make it meaningful. And one of the first lessons that I would like to bring out from the experience of Honeybee Network over 30 years is that pandemic did something miraculous. When the long supply chains were disrupted, what did it do? It reminded people that small-scale neighborhood supply chain, the Kirana shop next door, is the lifeline of the people. So large number of small-scale initiatives sustained the country during the last 3-4 months during the lockdown period. And the first time Gandhian principle of decentralized, diversified mechanism of development became evident to people. So what does Honeybee Network do? It gives voice, visibility, and velocity to the ideas of creative people in formal and informal sector. And please remember that the second thing that pandemic did was remarkable. A lot of tribal people in Arku Valley and around made masks of leaves because there was nothing else available. And it might surprise you, but if you go to Google and find out the property, antiviral property of Pongamia leaves, and to some extent of tea, sagwan leaves, and many other leaves that they used, which had medicinal property. Now, this is science at its best, but it did not emerge in a lab, but as Dr. Mashelkar often says, in laboratories of life. It emerged in the tribal region by the people who took this advice of the policymakers very seriously and designed found out the leaves which would make them, save them from the virus. Now, let me take this issue further. And you see this swan, and there's one which is following a different route. Anamika gave me this photograph from lake. And it's very interesting that this oddball, the one that doesn't follow the trend, is what characterizes the grassroots innovation. Every village, almost every slum, will have somebody who passes a vote of no confidence in the status quo and decides to break the rank, decides to unfollow the trend. So what do? They solve problems. And during Shodhyatra, learning walks, in summer we go to places which are hot, winter we go to places which are cold, and in autumn we go to Himalaya. And we have been walking in every single state of the country. Every single state, many states, several times. And we have sufficiently strong evidence that there is a very buoyant system of problem solving existing at the grassroots level. But what do we learn from that? So let me take the first example, which will show the building blocks of the ecosystem that exists, and that will possibly inform and educate the system, formal system, because it has stood the test of the time. So in Cherrapunji, in Meghalaya, we saw this bridge. So we asked the people, why did you make a bridge of tree roots? You could have made of concrete, wood, iron. There were so many other materials. They said the first culprit is culture. We want to do something different, something better, something different, something durable. And that led to this search for alternative materials. So they saw these ficus species on two sides of the river. The roots looked like rope. So let's see whether we can pull them and tie them with each other. So that became technology. But then technology wouldn't work alone. They needed group action. So that came the institution. There came the institution. So technology is like word, institutions are like grammar, and culture is like thesaurus. These are the three pillars of sustainability. I will take a case because Pradeep has done so much work in the field of water. We saw the beautiful International Center for Water that they have developed at IIT Madras. And it is useful, therefore, to bring that context back into our discussion and see what innovations can do to the system. So let me begin with a question. Supposing there were certain innovations not encouraged. There are two kinds of innovation we are talking about. Innovation from grassroots, which are often sustainable, but not always. Innovations for grassroots, which are often exploitative of nature and generally not sustainable. And let us look at what implication it has. So 54% of India is exposed to extremely high water stress. You can see that. Large number of districts, out of 718 districts, large number of districts, 400 and odd, around nitrate toxicity, fluoride toxicity, iron toxicity. Because when you extract water and you also increase salinity and other things, the metals from the lower levels of the water can come up on the surface. Now, why did it happen? We have people in Gujarat and many places in the country using 100 horsepower of motor to extract water. And today, Pradeep was saying that people go up to 3,000 meters. Now, can you imagine? This is innovation, but what is it doing? It is helping us extract fossil water, the water which was held between the rocks during the time when Earth was made, billions of years ago. This is not the water which will get recharged. What do common people do? Look at this. An innovation from Assam. Mathur Hussain and Mushtaq Ahmed, two brothers. They developed a windmill-based water irrigation system for a paddy field using hand pump. Now, there are two heuristics underlying this innovation which have relevance for our design of solutions for grassroots. First, hand pump has a single valve, so naturally water will come in spurts. Does it matter to the crop whether water comes smoothly or in spurt? Doesn't matter. Does it matter whether you irrigate the field in 4 hours by using high horsepower engine or in 40 hours by using a hand pump? Doesn't matter, really speaking. In fact, slow irrigation is more sustainable because less leaching takes place. And the roots don't get clogged, so more aeration takes place. So what are we talking about? Where is the rush? Why do you irrigate in 4 hours? What is the problem if it happens in 40 hours? Crop will be better. Less water will serve the purpose. Less leaching will take place. Nutrients will be utilized more efficiently. So what I'm talking about is that it is not just the technology of the grassroots innovations, but the heuristics underlying them, which can educate and teach us principles, value system, cultural values, institutional mechanism, which will justify such innovations and make a place for them. So therefore, we must remember slow irrigation, less leaching, low energy system. Ashok will going to talk about, I hope, about DC system, and I'm so fond of what he has done over the years that with low voltage, even the most excluded people can be included in the system of energy. So this a small motor, for example, if 20.25 horsepower, even not half a horsepower, would work with that current, and let it take 40 hours or 60 hours to irrigate the small field. What does it matter? Where's the rush, as I said? So, but then I must make a paradoxical statement. Not all grassroots innovations are sustainable. Most are, but not all. When you use dynamite to catch fish, you catch a small fish and big alive. It's not certainly sustainable. But when you use local materials, and since you are short of materials, you often reduce the entropy, and that is the crux of the sustainability. Let me take another principle that emerges from grassroots innovation, and this time I'm using the second principle of learning, which is first was artifactual, second is heuristics, analogic, third is heuristic, and fourth is gestalt. So let me look at analogic learning. This tree I saw in Kangra, so I went to the tree and asked what happened. He said, don't you see that I was not supposed to branch and I have branched? So what did I do? I made it a parallel stem. I said, my God, I'm talking to people now and cells in my body are going through mutation. Thank God these are not cancerous. Why? Because, and why? How is my body coping with it? It is either replacing it, it is reviving them, it is rejecting them, it is bypassing them. It is creating something by which my engine is continuing to run. This is called autopoiesis. The autopoiesis means self-design, self-governed, self-organizing innovations. Large number of grassroots innovations don't have a central headquarter, don't have a coordination committee, don't have an approval committee which justifies from which you have to get your proposal approved. It works through the mechanism. Of course, Honeybee Network has created institutions like Srishti in 93, Gyan in 97, and NIF in 2000, which provide institutional support to these innovations. But we are not approving their ideas. The ideas are emerging from them. And therefore, there's a huge autopoietic system of innovation and evidence at grassroots level in India and around the world. And it is very important that we realize that and work on that. Let's look at another example. And this again shows how grassroots communities and people pay attention to resources which we miss sometimes in our own labs and in our own workshops. Here is a kitchen and there is a stove here. And look at how as the smoke will go up, it will lose temperature. When it loses temperature, Can you use energy passing through different shelves for different functional purposes depending upon the temperature gradient in factories, in boiler rooms, and wherever you have huge heat that is produced? In a geyser, you know, we make the water very hot and then mix with cold water. That's how we waste the energy. Look at this, what he's doing. Here, first shelf, you are curing the wood because that is where the trolleys require in Meghalaya, Cherrapunji. Trolleys last longer if you cure the wood. There's drying the fuel wood because it receives 30,000 millimeter rainfall, Cherrapunji. Then you dry the meat or the cheese for storage, and then of course the bag of seed on the top. This is a beautiful example where temperature gradient has worked functionally for different purposes. Same amount of energy is being used through its process of entropy for different functional purposes. Let me bring another example. An example from two children, Kulsum Rizvi and Tarun. They saw that many of us don't sit properly. So they said, why couldn't there be pressure sensors on the back so that if you don't sit properly, chair will start singing song and not let you sit properly. I have had pain in my lower back 3 times after an interval of 3 years till I learned to sit properly, more or less, not even exactly, even now I'm not sitting as well as I should. Or the screen will go blank and a message will come, sit properly, I will not let you do work. Now it has not become a product as yet. That's where the innovation for grassroots, there are gaps. Innovation from grassroots, children are able to come out with ideas, farmers are able to come out with ideas, but not enough blending is taking place. Not enough blending is taking place. This is a good example of blending, where one girl in class 8th at that time, now she's in college, Shalini, sent an idea that walkers her grandfather used could not climb the stairs. What do? You make them adjustable. The teammate and I have made it adjustable. When you go up, the legs become shorter. When you come down, the leg become taller. A beautiful solution was developed by the team in a Fab Lab. It was licensed to 2 companies. She got royalty and license fee. And of course, she's one of the youngest entrepreneurs. It's a universal design. In USA, in Europe, you don't have such a walker. That's a good example where design companies got together, manufacturing company got together, formal, informal system blended very well, a product was designed. So there are 4 levels, as I said, we are learning from: artifactual, analogic, heuristic, and gestalt. And I began with the gestalt of technology, culture, and institutions. Now let's go further and see how we can use this framework of need assessment to blend both the ends. How can the institutional scientist learn from the grassroots committees? So let's assume that assurance, that means my ability to meet the need, is high or low, and my capacity, that means my competence, is high or low. It's not enough that I want to meet your need. I should have competence to meet your need. If both are low, there's unfelt need, apathy, indifference, silence, nothing changes actually. So there are areas where we have living India of 1,000 years ago. People are using technology which are 1,000 or 2,000 years old. For example, about almost 25 million households are using stove which was developed 10,000 years ago. I would not even say 2,000 years ago. 3 bricks, 3 stones, our ancestors had used, put a fire, and that's how they were cooking. We are using the same stove with 14% combustion efficiency in about 25 million households with the smoke and every other problem. So this is the case where nobody is solving their problem. Not enough effort is being done, and capacity is though high, but not being used for this purpose. If you have high assurance and low capacity, you can articulate the needs, you can help them. If the assurance is low, but capacity is high, self-design takes place. People don't wait for somebody else from outside to solve the problem. They take it on themselves. The entrepreneurial articulation takes place. And of course, if both are good, then you have co-creation, as Dr. Mashelkar also mentioned. Now, there's a look at the taxonomy of what kind of solutions we have. We can have, again, the same metrics, bridging the need gap. If both are low, we should bridge the need. If people can't meet their need, we have to fill that gap in. So if filtered water, they could not develop their technology. What Pradeep did, provided low cost, very affordable, very easy to maintain solution. That was the case which falls here because people didn't have any assurance somebody will give them clean water and people didn't have the capacity. Otherwise, they would have done it. If the assurance was high, need enhancement, we will not only give you good water, we will also give you a possibility of designing your own system to design to clean the water, because you may need more systems. We can't keep on providing you the solutions that you need. So we increase your capacity, we expand your need as a horizon. Or if, when the capacity is high and need is assurance is low, we eliminate them. Child labor, people can provide any number of children for work, but where is the guarantee that they will get education? They will not. So we should eliminate that need. And of course, we can transform the need. So what kind of systems that develop by looking at these two issues? So if you look at knowledge asymmetry in the network and synaptic interactions, when both are low, insular, we don't learn much. There's no need to discuss, and there is not much to learn from people. If the assurance is high and the synaptic interactions are low, we are islands of excellence. That doesn't take us very far. The gap between IITs and the second level of institution and the third is so huge. And when we give Gyati Award, Dr. Pradeep's student have got this award, Gandhian Young Technological Innovation Award, it becomes very difficult for us to find candidates for award from smaller institutions. Very difficult. They go to ISCI because they've set the standard so high. And there's not enough interaction taking place. NPTEL is a good example, but not enough examples exist where the capacity building of the local smaller tier 2, tier 3 institution is taking place. That's why they remain island. If asymmetry is low and interactions are high, we have peer learning, but again, we come to the average level of learning. We don't go very far with this. If both are high, we have inclusive knowledge system, and that's where we need to move. So what kind of inclusion we want? We want a spatial inclusion. Regions which have been bypassed must be included. Sectoral inclusion. I'm wearing a khadi kurta. Now khadi, where are the innovations in khadi? Which are the innovations? The loom is same. The yarn spinning system is almost same. Not many innovations are taking place. So there are certain sectors which employ after agriculture a very large number of people. Handloom sector and khadi sector employs very large number of people. And yet very little change that has taken place. Sectors have been bypassed. Seasons, flood. Today there is a flood in many parts of the country. And of course, where is Hasadullah's cycle? You wouldn't find a single cycle in any fire brigade office. Why wouldn't there be? In Bombay, there's a flood. Shouldn't every fire brigade office, shouldn't every society have such cycles so that they can get basic needs for the children, for others, at least in emergency, go to the local places and provide some relief? Social segments, we all know there are bypassed, certain communities, certain tribal segments, certain caste segments. Skill and knowledge, certain kinds of knowledge has been bypassed. And of course, the structure of governance, which creates rules by which bureaucracy by design excludes certain communities and certain sectors. So we need to overcome all the 6 kinds of exclusion to be able to bring inclusion. And these lessons, the beauty is that while formal system excludes them, the informal system of innovation, the grassroots innovations don't exclude them. In fact, the weaker the market linkage and bureaucratic linkage, the stronger is the urge to solve problem oneself. So therefore, once the people become dependent on market and state, they tend to innovate less. That's the paradox. Now let us open the door. Let us connect both the systems. How do we connect them? So this is an innovation playground. And there are 2 dimensions. One is inside out. Do I share my knowledge with others openly? Open innovation. Outside in, do I learn from others? So if both are low, I'm an ostrich. Nor do I share, nor do I learn. My behavior is like an ostrich. I'm doomed. When Dr. Mashelkar showed the list of companies which are no more there, they're doomed because they didn't learn from outside and they didn't share their knowledge with outside. The one which tries to learn from outside but doesn't share is a sponge. Inside out is low, outside in is high. A lot of crowdsourcing is done, but we don't tell people how valuable the idea of the common people was. You may pay a small amount, that's a different matter. So my confidence, Atma Vishwas, as Dr. Mukher said, my confidence in my idea doesn't go up because I don't know how much worthy it is. Did it get you 1 million, 10 million, 100 million? At least I don't give you anything, but tell me what it is worth, so that my confidence in thinking more ideas, better ideas, contributing more suggestions, more innovations increases. This is very interesting. When outside in is low, but inside out is high. Tesla opened all its patents. They were not afraid. They said more people will use my technology, more people will manufacture electric car, more charging stations will come about. That's the power of pollination. We need to be pollinator. And fourth, when both are high, DB, dil bada, dimag bada. People who have big heart and big mind will not hesitate in sharing and will not hesitate in learning. You know, in our tradition, we talk about when Lakshman was sent to Raman was on deathbed. And Ram said, go and learn from him. He was a great Rishi. He did a mistake, he suffered, but otherwise he was a great knowledgeable person. Get some wisdom from him. So in our culture, even from Raman, we are supposed to learn. Why shouldn't we learn from grassroots innovators? Why shouldn't we learn from the common people? We must. And that's very important that we should do that. Now, let me give one more framework and I'll then bring some examples and close my presentation. This is very interesting. How to make a breakthrough in future if we start opening the door and formal and informal sector start talking to each other. If Pradeep has an informal innovator committee for advising his center, he has experts of the word, Nobel laureate and everybody else. But for a change, he should say, okay, let me get grassroots innovators to advise what questions they will ask and how they will ask about the questions about water purity. You know, I'll give you an example. Arsenic is a very major problem. You have done huge amount of work, published world-class papers. So one of my colleagues was working in Bihar and he found that arsenic problem was evident only where hand pumps were used. When you use open wells, arsenic was not leached. So the solution was revive the open wells. It looks archaic, it looks traditional, it looks less modern, isn't it? But it solved the problem. Now, because solution doesn't look modern enough, we should reject it. And we should bring a new technology like hand pump, which increases the problem of arsenic, the entire eastern belt. It is a case of solution designed for grassroots, a bad solution designed for grassroots. It would have been better if we had made the open wells and put the hand pump in the open well. That would have been fine, because then they will pump the water in the well, which is clean without the arsenic. We would not have a problem of disposing arsenic that we collect through the filter. Where do we put that toxic element? So there are, if the domains are known or unknown and technological platforms known or unknown, if both are known, incubation will work. Incremental innovations will work. If platform is known, but the domain is not known, R&D with external experts, new actors, new arrangements will work. If the technological platform is not there, grassroots innovators didn't have a platform for a long time, but domain they knew very well. They modified, they brought about changes. I will show you how they made a motorcycle into a flying machine. They modified form, feature, and function. And if both are unknown, we need to go to sanctuary model. You know what is sanctuary? Chaos inside, order outside. In incubation, order is inside and chaos is outside. When markets have become uncertain, when climate has become uncertain, when pandemic has made the entire system uncertain, we will not get solutions through incubation model for dealing with high degree of uncertainty. We will have to move towards sanctuary model. Now look at this, what he has done. Very simple, I'll just show 30 seconds of this. A wheelchair bound person has to travel 50 kilometers. What will he do? He can't afford a car. And what will he do? He designed, Jignesh Bhai has designed this. Now he climbs this tricycle and now he is autonomous. He is self-governed. He is self-designed solution. So it meets the autopoietic innovation model. Now this solution has been, he can go anywhere he wants. This is the power. Jan has incubated this technology. So let us take another example. Motorcycle-based flying machine I just mentioned. It was transferred to Kenya among other countries, and they made a small tractor called a Shuja. And what is beautiful about it is that Kenyan Bureau of Standards, CABS, in 5 months they made the standards for this tractor. In my country, I have not been able to get the standards made for various kind of multi-purpose toolbars used with the motorcycle as yet. But they made it in 4 or 5 months, and the result is that a new industry is born. Mansubhai Jagani was the inventor. He got patent in US in 2003 because there wasn't any such arrangement there. So we proved that the grassroots innovations can push the frontiers of knowledge even in the advanced countries. Now, this is the book that Pradeep was referring to, but I want to refer to another book. One of the factors that we have also not overcome much, and I must admit our guilt, that we have far fewer innovations by women, but they are not the only one. Look at this. Autumn Stanley wrote this book in spanning 13 years of her life called as Mothers and Daughters of Invention. 13 years. This is the least read book. This is the least appreciated book. What did she do? She analyzed 200 years data of US Patent Trademark Office and found the share of women about 2% in the early 80s and by 8% in the late 80s. 200 years data she used. And the number has increased only 4 to 8% at different times. Why don't we use this book in our literature, in our discussion on technology? Why does women's voice remain muted? Now I'll come to the last two examples. Grassroots innovations can inform policy, they can inform institutions. But I have found only one example around the world where a knowledge of the community has been made an advisory by Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food. In our country, Dr. Chari wrote we published in Honeybee newsletter a review on milk as a disease for viral control disease way back 15 years ago.
5 minutes to go.
Yes, and in Ontario, they have an advisory that milk as a management tool for viral disease, and they say that milk or dip for seedling has been suggested as a means of reducing incidence of virus infection. Can you imagine? So what do we do now? Future, let me give few drivers of inclusive innovation: empathy, frugality, resilience, diversity, networking, inclusion not just of human beings, but non-human sentient beings, reciprocal and responsible. And this innovation investment enterprise triangle that Gyan has been trying to forge since 1997, the first incubator of grassroots innovation in the world. Now we want to do it globally. I'll mention that, how our vision going to form. So let us map. First lesson today is hotspots of creativity. Let's map the hotspot of creativity. We have made maps in several states and show that there are places where innovations emerge more. Is it because the stress is more? Is it because the problem is easier to solve? Is it because the local resources are diverse? All these determinants need to be done research on, and we need partnership for these kind of solutions. Second, chasing tornadoes, taming tornadoes to find super talent through super challenge. Challenge people, and they will find solutions. You challenge everybody, and I'm sure some of the grassroots level communities will surprise you with them. Involve them in your challenges. You will never end up being surprised. Third, change not monitored, the change not desired. How many lessons of grassroots innovations are taught in undergraduate BTech or postgraduate classes? Tell me. Hardly any. So then if you don't teach these solutions to the students, how will they get excited? How will they get inspired? How will they get provoked to develop some kind of bridge between the two systems of knowledge? So we must monitor this kind of gap in our institutions, in our policies. This is another example. How can by questioning the terms that become popular? IoT is a very popular term today. Almost everybody uses IoT and AI without looking at the underlying biases and underlying prejudices. So if I want to monitor pets and their stress, plants and their stress, my grandfather and his stress, my father is 93 now, and he feels stressed if you don't talk to him. Now, these are not things. They are not things. They are beings. So why do we talk about IoT? We can talk about IoT things and thoughts. We should redefine the concepts to bring our cultural values in so that we don't get hooked on to the concept evolved in one context and we just tailor our aspirations to that context rather than tailor the concept to the context. We have this, children are not sink of sermons, but source of ideas. We have Ignited Mind Award, Ignited Mind at honeybee.org, 15 September last date. Please share this with all the children who can send their ideas in IIT, wherever they are around the world, they can send their ideas. And the parents and teachers should send it at HBN Kriya, CRIIA, HBN CRIIA at honeybee.org, because we want parents not to use children's name as for their ideas. Sixth is democratizing knowledge and innovations. We have a lot of these databases. The last one, which has been developed recently, gyan.org/patent.php or techpedia.in/patent, has 0.9 million abundant US patents. Anybody can use them freely, including the people in IIT Madras or wherever. We have this Techpedia in. I want to give two examples of video innovations from our grassroots. This student, Vikas, did a very interesting innovation. He made an ordinary microscope, attached a device of 25,000 rupees. In 50,000, you get a fluorescent microscope. Beautiful, isn't it? Every primary health center can afford it. Therefore, they can diagnose TB. Without fluorescent microscope, you can't diagnose TB. This is another beautiful example from BITS Pilani, Hyderabad campus. It can find out which antibiotic you should use for solving the urinary tract infections in 4 hours as against 48 hours. So there are innovations, and we should collaborate between formal and informal system. We should either set up a global GAN or a global inclusive innovation foundation. And everybody who's looking at this program, who's participant here, is invited to learn, to leverage, to link, to legitimize innovation. So let me just close by saying creativity counts, knowledge matters, innovations transform, and incentives inspire, not just material incentive, but also non-material incentive, and not just individual incentive, but also collective incentive. Thank you so much.
Professor Anil Gupta, that was a fantastic exposure to it. You are a giant sort of encyclopedic knowledge, and walking through our country, our past, grassroots. I mean, your lecture showed us what all we can learn from people. We have to be simply open. And, you know, it certainly tells us many more lessons that universities are not really telling us. How do we capture all of these to ensure that India is resilient, world is resilient? Let us, please, people, please write your questions in the Q&A box. And we have several of these questions now. Please add yours. Next, we have our champion of innovations in the academic system, Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala. He needs no introduction, especially in the IIT Madras system. And for me, he is my elder brother, senior colleague. As I mentioned, I look up to him for motivation. He is going to tell us about industry-academia interaction, innovation, and incubation. Professor Jhunjhunwala.
You can share your slides, sir.
I hope you can see things.
Yes, yes, we can.
Just coming.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think after almost two such great talk, I do not even know how to begin. Fortunately, I'm talking about something quite different, and just that I'm a little worried that we are keeping you without interaction for too long. I'll see how fast I can move. So I'm going to talk about industry, academia, interaction, innovation, and incubation. Basically, what has COVID-19 done? It has, and simultaneously a conflict that we had with China, it gave us a realization that only when our R&D and innovation system is strong, India and Indian industry will be strong. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble. And I think this is something that we need very, very urgently. And therefore, I focused on that talk. So one of the biggest things that I will start with is very often we talk about, oh, we have done nothing in the last 50 years, 70 years. But I think one thing that we have done very well is Independent India has created some very high quality educational science and technology institutions, ISC, IITs, ICERs, IIMs. Now, in all these institutes, you see the best teachers come from all around the world. The students make a mark all over the world. The only thing has been in their research and development, their focus has been on basic R&D. Of course, it has been continuously going up. But if I look historically, they have had a relatively small impact on industry. There was fairly little. There were examples. I mean, I know of several individual examples, but I'll overall say that given the system, it was little translation of R&D to industry. Impact on industry, therefore, was trained manpower. That was a very important impact, particularly our master students. Today, our master students are there in almost every industry, and you'll find go to India anywhere. Of course, if you go to Silicon Valley, you will find our undergraduate students. But if you go to Indian industry, you will find our master student who are at the CXO level. If I look at Indian industry, and I'm looking at Indian industry 30 years, 35 years back, most of our technology used to be imported. Initially, I remember it was from the West, then it became from Japan, South Korea, and even China. And what they did was they imported the technology and productionized the system. There was significant indigenization for components carried out to reduce cost, but fundamentally, they did not produce systems per se. Over the last 25 years, things have started changing, and many of them set up their own R&D. I've seen it for last 35 or even more. But if you go to industry and look at their R&D, most of it is a replica of the West. They make a few breakthroughs and occasionally some innovative designs, and I'd say some reasonable amount of work on software. It is also able to leverage our low-cost manpower. So, they were able to leverage once in a while low-cost manpower to do more. And yet I will sort of say no major impact Indian industry has been able to do. This industry academia, we keep hearing about it. Forever we heard it. But seriously, I saw some early efforts in 80s. But it started with difficulties. It started with a situation where industry believed that academia has a very little to contribute to the industry. Academia just wants some funds and want to pursue paper publication. They do not understand products and no products will be possible. Now, this belief was there very strong in 80s. I won't say this belief has gone. This belief is still the dominant belief, but you will see changes taking place. On the other hand, if I look at academia, academia also dismissed industry, that industry is not interested in R&D, they are only interested in importing technology, does not understand strengths of academia, does not respect them really, and not interested in developing innovative technology. They want a Me Too technology. They would rather get proven technology transferred from elsewhere, even pay through their nose. Do not know if we make a prototype in academia, they do not know how to take it to the product level. This is the belief that academia had, and if you see, and this created a huge gap. Actually, industry knew some things, they did well. Academia knew something, they did well, but there were gaps and there was no one to fill the gaps. This was the biggest problem. The industry will say, well, this is up to the academia to do, and academia will say, this is up to the industry to do. So where did this stalemate started getting broken? Actually, I found that the stalemates largely were broken by some academician with a vision to make a difference. Of course, there were some industries also, but largely I will say academia sort of say, well, whatever be the gap, we will fill it. We will not wait. We will not blame each other. It doesn't matter where the industry is. They have some strength. I'll recognize that. I have some, whatever is the gap, I will make it happen. It is this kind of individual effort, and I think Dr. Mashelkar has been one of the person who did this, which actually started bridging this gap. And the idea is then you fully complement each other. And what it also required is a lot of regular, formal and informal interaction. So it took a long time, a step at a time, very slow in the beginning, when industry started trusting academia a bit. And academia accepted industry in a few places, but the gap by and large remains. Today, industry academia connect has begun. It is far better. And specifically, when you look at for making a product more affordable in Indian context, industry has by and large recognized that when they directly import things from West, the product is not affordable. Therefore, if they import technology, they will be able to make something for a small percentage of people. But if they are able to make the product affordable, then 40–50% of Indians could possibly afford it. And that will be huge market. Once they understood that, the industry started working with academia, and very often industry academia connect is for the affordable, the first of this assured thing that Professor Mashelkar talked about. But even then, the interaction was not for products with breakthrough ideas and considerable risks. I mean, if I look at some of the things that Professor Pradeep does, I think industry will not be very hungry. They will say, well, too much of a risk. They are too different. We have to do something different. So what did academia do? For highly innovative and risky ideas, academia finally started to go to startups, creating startups. This is something that started in, I'll say, mid-90s, but picked up later on in beginning of the century and started looking at startups. And this is what has started happening. So basically we saw, therefore, academia does two different things. One is licensing technology to established company. Now, technology would be rarely fully ready, would require efforts to convert into products which can be manufactured 24/7, acceptable to customers, make money. And this was a challenge by and large, but there was done. Or through an incubated startup. Create a new product, disrupt existing solution, technology ecosystem. When established companies will not be ready to take risk, create a startup which will be willing to take a risk and take it forward. And this is what you saw. And all this different interaction, we ourselves were involved in quite a few of this and industry academy interaction. We learned from that. We learned what our strengths are. And then we came with the concept of the research park. And at IIT Madras, we set up this research park, basically recognizing that if you really want to speed up and do something very interesting, very innovative, you need three sets of people. The first is the faculty member who has a wide knowledge. The knowledge is not limited to a particular field. Faculty member suddenly brings his knowledge in a totally different field onto the table. And this width of knowledge makes a huge difference. But an industry person actually knows how to convert a prototype or something into a product which can be manufactured and sell. That is a specific strength of an industry person and a youngster. And I really value this youngster. Fortunately, when we started in 80s, there were only 20,000 engineers graduating every year. Today, we have 2 million engineers. Now, one will complain saying that many of them are not trained well. Many of the colleges are not good. Yes, that is true. But probably there are more than 1 million youngsters who graduate every year. If you give them the right environment, in 2 to 3 years of 16 hours a day work, 6 days a week, and suddenly they are amongst the best. They are comparable to, I'll say, IIT graduates. What these youngsters basically bring to the table, the youngsters does not know that it cannot be done. I think this is the very important thing. You go to an industry person, established person, well, he says, well, this cannot be done. That's one of the biggest problems, because they have learned saying this will not be possible. You will not succeed. The youngster does not know that it cannot be done. Even if it cannot be done, the youngster does not know he's ready to slog 16 hours a day and finally make something. This cannot be done. Not knowing cannot be done is a very big strength. And you need therefore these three sets of people, the one with knowledge, the one who knows how to convert into product, and the one who does not know that it cannot be done. And I think it is this, bringing this together, we had at IIT Madras, the industry person, sorry, the faculty and the youngster, we actually brought in the industry person at the research park adjacent to IIT Madras and invited industry to come and set up their R&D at the park and got going. Today, we have 1.2 million square feet, 250,000 parking lot square feet. We have spent 500 crore rupees on this, but only 107 crore rupees came from governments and from alumni and donation and grants. Remaining 380 crore rupees were borrowed from the bank. So this is also a startup in some sense. It's a very big risk. Everybody thought that we just got nowhere. What is more important is that we have over last 10 years cleared 350 crores of that bank loan. We today have only 30 crore rupees loan, and we earn more than 30 crore, almost 40 crore, 35 crore, 40 crore rupees every year. We actually house about 85 companies. Plus, we also have our incubation cell out there. And somehow, this is the place where industry, academia, and youngsters just work together. We've just created this environment, created a little bit of push, and then there are people like Prof. Pradeep who will come and start creating things. We actually recognized the different stages of technology development. One of the point is that wherever technology needed a long time, a large funding and carrying it high risk, we would sort of say, don't do it as a startup. Leverage government funds, public funds, CSR funds, carry it out in R&D lab of academic institutions. Involve youngsters. Promise them that ultimately they will be able to come to create a startup. But till it reaches that stage, do not till it is ready to be commercialized, do not create a startup. So we have created large number of centers where this work goes on. But the minute the product is ready, we transfer it to a startup or to an established company. Now, this is an important model because very often people sort of say in bio, it takes 8 years to mature a technology. Fine, don't start a startup because a startup will run out of funds and you'll keep on asking, going to various government agencies and they will say, oh, they cannot fund a startup beyond a certain point. Do this in R&D lab. Take it to a stage where within a year or two you can start making money. That's where you create a startup. Don't do it too early. And I think Professor Pradeep is recognizing that and is taking the technology in the lab and taking it at the right stage. One of the other things that you find that is happening at IIT Madras Research Park is development of deep technology products. Now, I'm start talking about deep technology products vis-a-vis that which requires not deep technology. It requires a lot of other things, but not deep technology. Now, and we'll see the difference as we go on. It is a deep technology product where industry, academia interaction makes a huge difference. Academia's contribution is very significant because they understand technology. We actually, of course, realize that there is no quick result. In anything that we do in our lab, there are multiple failures before there is a success. So it requires a long-term engagement. And it requires a large number of youngsters to be inspired. You have to really inspire youngsters that you are going to make a difference. And it is more than saying that you will make money. Yes, money matters, but I think more important that you will make a difference. And many of them are simultaneously registers for masters and PhD, and we get things started. Of course, you can also do development of software applications. These are low-hanging fruits. They are not deep technology. This requires less effort, and this is something that happens. We are not big experts. There are many places where software applications are actually being done. But if you talk about software products, now India is a great country with software industry, but does not make products. When you talk about software product, it is as difficult as a deep technology product. It is tough and requires long-term collaboration, and therefore you really need to do this step by step and work hard to get there. And we have also started doing that. If you look at areas, for example, internet, IT, and simulators may enable made early gain. This is something that happened in mid 80s and 90s. Electronic and mechanical system design today considerably enabled by powerful simulators and software. Now, what we find is that a college graduate coming from tier 3 college, not even a tier 2, we are able to get them to start becoming good at simulators in about 4 or 5 months of hard work. And suddenly they start producing things. And areas where collaboration can take build deep tech strength in 2 to 4 years. So now with all this in 2 to 4 years, this is possible. There are communication systems, IoT or IoTT, AI and data analytics, robotic systems, battery pack design, IC design, auto sectors, medical instrumentation, energy systems management, motors and controllers. I'm specifically talking about motors and controllers because while we are talking about electric vehicle, every single motors and controller we are importing from China today. It's only now we are starting to develop them ourselves. Inverters, education technology, medical electronics. These are some things where I'll say relatively 2 to 4 years you can make gains. Complex and large system design would take some more time. This is something again I want to point is not something that is easy. More difficult, there are areas which require large investment and longer time to market. I'll say by and large chemical and processing technologies, material technologies. We haven't seen many startups with material technology. Battery cell manufacturing, solar cell manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, and we don't see enough startups, but these requires large investment and they would require some government support, some labs to work on it. Here also software and IoT can give some early gains, but these are the areas where centers have to work for 4, 5, 6 years before you will start seeing gains. There are other technology relevant to India. India requires a large number of recycling technology, affordable recycling technology, not just import things, less energy intensive recycling technology. Of course, agriculture, food processing, waste disposal and cleaning. This is a major issue in the country. Huge gains are possible. Less energy intensive and capital intensive. Technology for environmental renewal, technology to help highly dense urban area live. Today they don't live. You can shut yourselves in glass houses and you can pretend to live. Serious education and healthcare technologies. All this will require significant effort and we are seeing gains taking place, slow gains one after another. India is a country, one of the very important thing is the point that Mashelkar made right in the beginning, affordable. India is a country where per capita incomes are very low. Even though in 30 years we have grown at a 7% real income gain every year, but yet it is very low and it will take another 10-15 years where I will say we'll start seeing some decent income. As Professor Mashelkar pointed out, we had pulled out a large percentage of people out of poverty. I thought the number of people under poverty had gone down to less than 10%. And suddenly I see a very big risk because 10 to 15% people have been pushed back in last 4, 5 months, 6 months. So we have to actually make every product and service to be more affordable than that in the West. How does one build a low cost system, product and service? A big challenge, and this is what we have to overcome. Let me come to slightly different areas, nurturing entrepreneurship at universities. And one point that I want to make, it is not just about setting up an incubator center, because lots of universities have set up incubation center. But are you really nurturing entrepreneurship? Are you creating good startups which make a difference? Now, India overall started in 2004. I think Department of Science and Technology started this. A large number of setups have been done, but are they really creating good entrepreneurs? This is something that I'm saying, and what does it require? What a university requires in the beginning is a good sensitization drive, where you create excitement by bringing in people who can excite people, can have lots of talks, talk about, create a culture of making, building things, centers for innovation, tinkering lab. The more important thing is that they have to run entirely by students. Don't let faculty run it. This is a mistake that people make it. Then things does not flower up. Let them be there 24 hours. Don't start telling, oh, the boys cannot come, girls cannot come. Provide them security and safety, but no direct faculty supervision. This is something that you require. Have lots of talks, create excitement. But that is done by many people. Now, of course, the run entirely by student part is not done by most people. But the second part is, then you need to create reality check. And this is the beginning of incubation. You need to bring down the excitement and get serious. Excitement will bring students and faculty with tall promises of huge success, and you start telling them it's a very difficult career option. Very high chance of failure. You are more likely to fail than succeed. You are going to fail multiple times. It will require long time and very hard work, much more than what if you take up a job, and very little immediate return. I think this has to be somehow pushed inside. Those who cannot withstand this do not succeed. I haven't come across people who succeed without this. And this is something our students are able to take it, our youngsters are able to take it. But you know, this excitement phase where people have talked about billionaire and all that actually hurts. Well, it's good, it brings them, but you now need to get them down to the earth. The entrepreneur needs to be a master of multiple trades. Product idea plays a smaller role. It is build products, manage people. Suddenly you have become a manager of people. You'll suddenly find people will not stay with you. Manage finance, cash flow. Every month you have to pay salary, assess market, manufacture products and services with which customers like, sell, make margin for the product. Even after you sell, you find you're making no margin. Raise money, handle the cash flow problem, handle the fact that you have sold, but you haven't got payment. Now, these are large number of skills that need to be taught. Now, universities are not good at it. And let me tell you that management faculty are not good at it. I'm telling in front of Professor Ahmedabad, they don't understand finance. They don't understand cash flow. They don't really understand how to pay salaries at the end of the month. Preparing a startup for a long haul, it requires a large hard work, reboot after failures, and there will be multiple failures before you will succeed. Provide training, a very wide variety of training. We are trying to create a large different kind of training, but yet it is not like classroom teaching. It's make the things available. People will take it at their own pace. Online, offline, don't push them. Multi-dimensional training. Training may include
we have only 5 minutes.
Understanding of the market, prototype to manufactured product, understanding company's finance, very, very important. This is where I see failure takes place. And as I told you, how does one manage team? It's a multi-dimensional training required.
5 minutes to go.
Yes, sir, I know that. Mentors should be from industry. Preferably be leaders of successful enterprise. How do you attract that? That's a problem, but if you are able to get them, you will make a difference. SAM alumni with long-term industry experience. Preferably one-to-one mentorship. Faculty members are not good mentors. They probably can help you with technology, but they are not good mentors overall. There are few, but only a few. You get Anil Gupta, sure he will inspire you, but you won't get that very often. The other important thing, mentors must be purely advisors. They advise and not decide. One of the big mistakes that, particularly this is a problem if we faculty or teachers go and become mentors, we sort of say this has to be done. This is not a mentor's job. Mentors will provide you feedback, will tell you bluntly what will work or not work, and walk out. It is the person who will decide, will succeed or fail. How do you really get them started? An incubation committee to decide whether to admit a startup. Now it should be fair, their decision. You create any influence and get one or two startup, admit them wrongly, you'll land up into trouble. Send them back. There should not be any VCs and deans on this committee. Invariably, we see when there are VCs and deans and directors, you land up into trouble. Similarly, when you incubate, provide no funding support. Provide them some shared space, some business support, financial services, mentoring, but no financial support. No easy money. Easy money hurts a startup. Let them work for it. Come step by step. There should be another committee, again avoiding deans and administration. Make it difficult for them to even get 5 lakhs. Easy money will hurt. And then you gradually, as they start doing well, give them a little bit better and better. And then you facilitate angel and venture fund. Let them win with external funding, not internally. And this is what exactly we have done. At IIT Madras Incubation Cell, we have tried to create such deep tech incubator, not in one area, but in multiple areas. And today we have 200 plus incubated companies. We have done that. And our current value of this company is 7,000 crore rupees. This was, of course, this is a March value. I don't know how much has been impacted. Sure, you will see some impacted, but you also see some tremendous gain. Now, these, you can't say the value of the company. Value of the company only comes if somebody outside is willing to fund at that value. So if a company is 100 crore, if somebody puts in 15 crore rupees at that 100 crore rupees valuation. Very often we sort of say, oh, my company is 100 crore. It has no meaning. You must have somebody putting in 15 crore rupees at 100 crore valuation, then it becomes 100 crore. Today, out of this 7,000 crores, we ourselves used to take 1%, 2%, 3% share, and we ourselves have 100 crore rupees shares value. Let us, but pretty much I want to end. I don't want to talk anymore. India has a long way to go. I heard this slogan Atmanirbhar, something that is very dear to us, something that we have worked for last 30 years. But I'm very scared, Professor Mashelkar. Will this be another empty slogan? I'm sorry, sir, but I've seen government entities interfere and think, and they don't really provide support, the right thing that they need to do. And I think this Atmanirbhar thing will just not take off unless we are able to get industry and academia and youngster to slog and innovate. We should, of course, they will face the market and they will get hurt and they will fail and they will come out of this, but let government not make it more difficult. Today, unfortunately, in spite of big talks, government is not making it easy. Even the rules and regulations are not good. For example, they cannot even participate in tenders of government. You start asking for their experience and last 3 years profit and all things. Shortcuts. Enough has been done in last 30 years to show that it is possible. And I strongly believe we will succeed. It's a question of how fast we succeed. And there are very large number of youngsters who are ready to go, not just from engineering college, pretty much any youngsters. These youngsters are very good. You inspire them. You create 100,000 such youngsters, get them into startups. Let them fail. And unless they fail multiple, celebrate their failure and let them succeed. And I think that is what is going to happen in the country. And we have to just work for that. Thank you very much.
Professor Jhunjhunwala, that was a highly motivating talk, and your passion for creating an inclusive innovation ecosystem in a university setup came out so clearly. And I suppose anyone who is interested in building such an ecosystem should listen to Professor Jhunjhunwala. Now the time is 6:49. We wanted to have about 20 minutes for questions, but then Professor Mashelkar has another engagement at 7 o'clock. I do not know about my other two distinguished colleagues, Professor Jhunjhunwala and Professor Anil Kumar Gupta. So may I take this liberty of going a little further so that we can answer many of these questions and have some debate? Can we go up to 7:10?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
Fine,
yes,
fine.
no problem.
So maybe if in case Professor Mashelkar has to leave, he may be permitted to leave at whatever time that is possible. Otherwise, we will continue for up to 7:10. We have now about 38 questions or so. I'm not in a position to, we can't take all of these questions, and I'll start taking some questions which can be addressed by Dr. Mashelkar first. Sure. Professor, Dr. He is both, so I am sort of coming as Dr. Mashelkar and Professor Mashelkar. Well, India is an agrarian economy. What will be the impact of COVID on such a community, such a society, and what will the impact be on innovations, which is sort of maybe connected with the agrarian society. So this is the first thing, and maybe the next or sort of somewhat related thing is that for one to innovate, of course, there must be institutions, but then you have been the Director General of the CSIR system. One of these people want to know that why we didn't have an institution only for innovations in this country, and what should we do now? So those will be the first two questions that we take up.
Yeah, fine. I'll be happy to answer. In fact, while both Anil and Ashok were giving absolutely fascinating talks, I hope the audience realizes whom they were listening to. Ashok and Anil, to me, are absolute icons, and it was just amazing to listen to them. I was also going through all the questions, Pradeep, and of course, you have picked up two of them, but there are many others also who are
many. We will be coming.
So if you don't mind, rather than going question wise, I'll pick up 2 or 3 important themes that emerge from these questions, including the one that you have talked about. I think the first thing is that there is nothing like creating an institute for innovation. I'm sorry, innovation is a way of life in everything that we do, right from the time you get up in the morning till you sleep. Okay. And every institution, every laboratory, innovation has to be sort of a part of everything that they do. People confuse between research and innovation. Research converts money into knowledge. Innovation converts knowledge into money. Okay. And we have kept them separate. In fact, in great institutions, like what Ashok has done from his early days, he integrated education, research, and innovation. Education, creating new knowledge, disseminating new knowledge, research, creating new knowledge, and innovation, converting knowledge into wealth. That is what he pioneered, as a matter of fact. You know, almost 30 years ago now, people talk about startups and so on and so forth. So it has to be considered as integral in everything do, whether it is National Chemical Laboratory, Physical Laboratory, Aerospace Laboratory, Botanical Research Institute, in everything, including in sort of non-science areas. Agrarian economy, of course, it is mainly, once again, innovation becomes sort of a key. And to the respondent, I'll be happy to send 2 of my papers. One is a convocation address and one was a memorial lecture in terms of what can be sort of done with it. If the email ID is available, I would sort of like to answer it offline, because there's not. But I think that there are 2-3 points very quickly, Pradeep, if you allow me, I'll comment before I leave for my 7 o'clock meeting. The first is a very important point that both Ashok and Anil made. I have always talked about talent, technology, and trust. We have the talent, we have the technology, it's the trust. For example, just now Ashok talked about the process for tendering, etc., etc. Now we have to create systems by which this happens. Like, I'm co-chairman of Maharashtra State Innovation Council, and we have created a system where tendering is done very differently for startups. All right. So we can't ask Sachin Tendulkar, who is having a Ranji Trophy Test century at 15, where is your 10-year experience? You can't do that. All right. So we have created those systems. For example, somebody had created drones which work on surface of water. Basically, no tendering process. He was given a direct contract in Pune, and then he has gone to 6 other cities. So there are possibilities. In fact, on this also, I have written a paper on what is called as a public procurement policy for supporting this innovation, which is available in Amitabh Khan's book, but also on my website, which deep dives into this on how those systems can be altered. The last point I'd like to make before we go, because this is a point that we missed throughout today. We talk about resilience. We have to create a resilient India. And just now, for example, Ashok talked about the imports that we have from China. I think we have to realize that we are very heavily dependent in number of areas. And there are some areas where we can get away with, like we banned 59 apps, no problem. The Chingaris of this world came, etc., etc. But there are others where we'll have difficulty. For example, we are number one in drugs and pharma, generic, but we are dependent 70% on the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So if you bring them to zero, today our drugs and pharma industry will go. So we'll have to have what is called as a strategic patience. This is my Dr. Vijay Kelkar's word, and have plans where we don't say China less, but less China, less and less China, and no China, and do it sort of very fast. I think we have to have a sort of policy around it. So I would say only this, and basically close my remarks. And by the way, Ashok, you also mentioned that bulk of the time we are copying the rest, etc., etc. I'm seeing lots of innovations that are coming up where we are ahead. Our challenge, and this is my last point that I'll be making, is the talent, technology, and the trust is missing. Now, let me give an example to finish off, where we are ahead of the rest of the world, but because of a certain lack of support with the public procurement policy, we could not make it. Let me give that example. And both Ashok and Anil are aware of that. This was Computer in 2001. It was a low-cost alternative to PC, and it was a shared device that can permit truly simple and natural user interface based on touch, sound, sight, and audio at that time. And it could read and speak 7 Indian languages. And what it did, Ashok, as you know, it was ahead of iPhone, ahead of Samsung Galaxy. What iPhone did later, accelerometer, it had earlier. Samsung Galaxy did later, like their Bongo on Mail or the ability to write on phone, it had. In fact, Bruce Starring of New York Times had said that most significant innovation in computer technology was not Apple's gleaming power of 4G, nor Microsoft Windows XP. It was Computer, a net-linked, radically simple, portable computer, which can bring computer revolution. Did it? No. We had the talent, yes. We had the technology, yes. We were ahead of the world. The trust part of it was missing, because normally in a public procurement policy, you pick up a product like this. Somebody talked about, oh, there are no products. That is not correct. I mean, there are so many of them. And then, for example, good public procurement policy will order 10,000 of these. All right. You get into the market, get market feedback, refine the product, create a business plan, and you go. That is the way that sort of we have to do. So when we talk about a startup nation, Israel, yes, we are a starting up nation, and we have to make this robust innovation ecosystem. Government has a big role to play. The corporates have sort of a big role to play. And I have myself benefited so many of these startups through using the corporate social responsibility sort of funds, you know. I mean, Anil knows that we had this, for example, something which looks like this, which is a portable, you know, for your ECG machine. I remember Tata Trust gave the money, and today it is in the market, etc. So I think that entire ecosystem needs to be developed. Talent, technology, and trust to really create Atmanirbhar Bharat. It cannot be just an isolation, but it has to be integrated with global supply chain. It has to be sort of competitive. And as a dangerous optimist, you already called me dangerous optimist. I feel we can do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me ask you one last question before you leave. That was in the context of, you know, you brought a parallel between climate and the pandemic. And you have something more to say on that?
No, I'm saying is that this pandemic has given us a trailer about what is going to happen in the future. When climate change, we are not able to control the kind of temperature rise that we are sort of trying to control. If that does not happen, this is exactly what is going to happen. That's the point I'm trying to make.
You also wanted to say probably that in such regions where climate is going to impact tremendously, something more can happen in terms of innovation.
Yes, yes, indeed. And these are very serious warnings, by the way, very serious. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you indeed very much. Let's move on to a few other questions. There is one very interesting question. How can these populations wherein there is political instability, how can there be innovations in such places? And how can such places continue to innovate? This was a particular reference to Kashmir and places like that. Professor Gupta, do you have some comments on that?
First of all, the assumption that Kashmir doesn't have innovation is wrong.
Yeah.
We have had 2 Shodh Yatras in Anantnag and Gurez Valley, which is near Kargil, and we found some fascinating innovations in Kashmir. That's one. So therefore, and Northeast equally well. So this notion that in the backwaters of our country, economically depressed region, innovations are less is not true. In Baripali in Odisha, we found during our Shodh Yatra almost every day an innovation, which is very unusual. We don't find every day, but that Yatra we found every day in Bargarh district in Odisha. So issue is not that there are lack of innovation, and also there's a lot of traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge of one place becomes innovation of another place. Problem is value addition, problem is validation, problem is engagement with formal scientific and technology institutions, problem is with formal design organizations, both private and public, to engage. We have succeeded in 2 regards. Wherever we could tie up with the public sector labs, none of the scientists charged for their personal time, so that was helpful. When it came to pro bono IPR protection, none of the IPR lawyers charged for their fees. These 2 things we could do. That's how NIF could file more than 1,000 and odd patents in India and also abroad. But when it comes to designers, when it comes to fabrication, when it comes to finishing the product, we have been lacking. And I think that's what is most important needing. And we will have to then develop mobile facilities in these areas where density is low, population density is low, markets are scattered and very weak. There you need mobile facilities. You cannot fix in one place because most people can't travel that far. In Northeast, distances are very large. So that is a model we have not yet tried, but we should try fab labs which are mobile, the biological laboratories which are mobile, and do some analysis and provide information to people at their doorstep.
You mentioned about mothers and daughters.
Yes.
Are we learning from women? How do we learn from women better?
The interesting thing is that in the domain in which they have control, they have extreme innovation. I'll just give one small example. We met a midwife in Champaran near Ranchi. Sorry, not Champaran, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, near Ranchi. And she said, very angry, in an angry mood, that you people from the formal system don't understand that when a child is born, you should not cut the umbilical cord till it is pulsating for about 8 to 10 minutes, because it's still taking nutrition from the womb. Second, the delivery should be in a dark room, very, very dimly light room, not in a bright light. Child gets a shock because infant was in the womb for 9 months in a dark environment. Now these 2 are, extremely viable and scientifically valid advice, and yet our delivery rooms in the hospitals don't follow this. She also mentioned that the squatting position, and that some doctors now admit, is much better for delivery than lying down. All delivery tables are horizontal. They don't allow such squatting position for the mother. So there are very, very viable, visibly useful knowledge that women have, which we have not drawn upon in our formal scientific system, whether it's medical, it's engineering or wherever. And I think we need to pay attention to that aspect. Women have a tremendous capacity to cope with the problems. They adjust and adapt. Yeah. They adjust and adapt most of the time rather than transcend. And because they were not given tools, the blacksmithy tools were denied to women by cultural rituals. Women couldn't be a blacksmith. Yeah. Except Lamada community, you will not find a blacksmith. So they were denied the tools by which they could fabricate and solve their problems. So culturally, we have not given them agency enough to be able to solve their problem. We need to change this. It is changing slowly, but needs to change more.
Very nice. Let me take one question which both of you, I would like you to respond. What can institutions do to help innovation in the new education policy?
I would show one simple slide which will convey what I want to say. that there are 4 aspects which every public institution or private institution can do.
Ramya, please share that.
Yes, I have shared it. Can you see that?
No, Ramya has to project it. Yeah.
Ramya?
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. It will
Yeah.
come up.
You're
So
doing
there are
that.
4. Yeah, search innovation, spread innovation, celebrate innovation, and sense or benchmark the unmet needs. These are the 4 things that every student group or Honeybee Network Innovation Club or whatever you call them, by whichever name you call them, we could do that. And it can be incorporated in various disciplines. So if you are in material science, it will be useful to share with the people who work with ceramic or clay pots as to what are the innovations that they have done. For example, we have clay pots in Chota Udeipur, which are polished and lined with a natural lac. So they are non-stick clay pans without using any Teflon or any chemical. Beautiful idea, very sustainable, very low cost. And surely, in fact, the layer of the carbon is so thin that sometimes it is believed that it could also be a graphene kind of material that can be developed on the layer of the lac vessel. So it is very important that we work on searching the innovations from the informal sector, spreading them, and celebrating. Invite innovators in the classroom, both formal and informal. Ashok mentioned many examples. How many of these startups? I'm sure in IIT Madras they may have been invited, but I would wish that they are invited more often. In my class at IIM Ahmedabad, I invite these innovators to work with the students, and students then probably develop some solutions for them. So even the public policy makers, secretary to different government ministries should invite the achievers, innovators, at least one lunch or one dinner in a week they should have with the innovators, so that they learn about how problems are solved without bringing too much of complexity and too much of bureaucracy. Sense the unmet needs. This is one thing which we have not done enough. We should benchmark, we should inventorize the unmet need in each sector, in each locality. And then that should become the assignment for the project in various courses. That can be done. Instead of taking imaginary problem, the real problem become the subject of project. That could be done. One can do much more meaningful work. So new education policy refers to education, to innovation and research, but the process also has to be outlined. Unless and until we allow flexibility in the curriculum so that the students can do all the 4 functions, I think we will have difficulty without that.
You have something to add, Professor Jhunjhunwala?
Ashok, तुम्हारी voice, your mic is muted. Ashok, your mic is muted.
Yeah. Question was on the new education policy, and I won't comment too much on the education policy. But let me point out that I strongly believe that our biggest strength of India is its people power, human power. Youngsters, it doesn't matter where they come from, does not matter which college they have gone to or school they have gone to. Inspire them, make them work very hard. Put tools and other things in front of them. Let them learn on their own. If you inspire them to learn and put challenges in front of them, they will overcome challenge. Guide them, create small group to guide them. But this classroom teaching, etc., can only do so much. The students get bored in the classrooms. Even with the best teachers sometimes. Sure, sometimes the teachers are able to inspire them. But after they graduate or outside, you essentially, there are now tools and other things available. Do that. Show all the other things that are being done. Push them hard, inspire them, put challenging tasks with them. Tell them anything, that this is something today being imported. Let's see whether you can make it. And even the most difficult one, you will find that they will contribute. They learn a lot. I won't say they are trained, they are not. But give them 2 years, 3 years of a right environment to learn and reach at the top. That's what is needed.
Thank you.
Can education policy do that? Can informally we do that? We don't know. I think anybody, I'm sure Anil Gupta takes very ordinary people, and 2 years working with him, they are very different. I think Pradeep does the same thing. I think this is what we need. Our biggest strength is our people, young people.
Thank you very much.
As they get older, they'll start saying cannot be done, cannot be done.
I have two more questions, but then we may not have too much of time. In fact, in the past, 10 minutes, we have added 10 more questions, and therefore it will be difficult to answer all of them. But one question is probably relevant. Digital, the word itself, digital, is global. Digital economy is global. The global supply chain is affected by the pandemic. And you need digitization. At the same time, you need self-reliance. So how do you balance this?
If I can quickly say, I would say Gandhian model will have to be preferred. We will have to now learn to grow some of our vegetables, some of our processing will have to be done. We'll have to do more things with our hands. We'll have to, build a relationship between neighborhood communities. Not everybody needs to do everything oneself. We'll have to self-organize into mutual help communities as the way rural society was. Even in urban areas, we'll have to do that. Second point is that online education is being given a lot of stress, but there are millions of people in this country who do not have a smartphone and who do not have access to it. There are tomorrow we are going to have a webinar of such teachers who have found a solution, and I'll just mention three. One is use cable TV network for teaching children, because these children have television, but they don't have a smartphone and they don't have internet. Second, people have used in Kutch loudspeaker in a village. The mosque loudspeaker was used to broadcast lessons to the children in the class, in the village. That is second thing that have been done. Third is that there are children teachers who are going to the communities and doing learning around one smartphone, and that becomes the hub for the 10-15 children to learn from. So there are different models that people are trying. In our policy, we have not even paid attention to the fact that the gap between the privileged and the less privileged is increasing because of overemphasis on digital education, unfortunately, because there's a large number of people in this country who do not have smartphones and who do not have network in their areas. How will we reach them otherwise? So digitalization is good, important, we welcome it, but it should not become the only highway through which the knowledge should be diffused. Ashok.
So I fully agree with what Anil is saying, and yet I will answer it in a different manner. The first thing, I don't know whether many of you have heard that IIT is coming with a fully online degree, 3-year degree. Anybody can enter, no entrance exam, only exit exams. And you can exit after 1 year with a certificate, or it's a 2-year with a diploma, or a 3-year with a bachelor's degree. You will have to work very hard, because we will not lower down the standard, but we will be able to teach you, give you very high quality courses. So the digital also helps in many ways. I think the key thing that Anil Gupta was sort of saying, digital has to be used in India to broaden. Now, something like this suddenly makes the IIT education was exclusive, only so many students can get it. When you broaden this, and I agree with that, many of them may not even have the access to it, but I think over time you'll find they will figure out a way to access it. But you have to always think of broadening and let people's, you will certainly find a person from a village who otherwise will have no chance of going through JEE and getting into IIT, will start doing this. Even if they get out after 1 year, they would have learned enough to start doing things. Create quality. I strongly believe in quality.
No, I agree. This is a very good example.
Inspire them. The other important thing is, which I find that this large scale thing fails to do, because large scale is what IIT is trying to do. But the inspiring can be done with small groups. And this is where I think our school teachers have to rise up. Somehow we have to enable, or any individual can actually mentor a small number of people and basically start pushing them hard. You have to push them hard. One of my...
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Well, let me take the last question, and then with that we will close. That is, that we talked about Atmanirbhar. We talked about self-reliance. But in several areas, such as solar energy, does it mean that we also have a silicon foundry? Where are we heading to? And if we have to, well, how do we do?
So I think I will try to answer this. We shouldn't get fixated by one thing. I think there is on any system, there are large number of things that you can do. Even if, and don't try to do everything. Atmanirbhar does not mean that I'll do everything. Even if I have to import some things, there is a lot of other things that I have to do to really make a system. Today, for example, on cell phone, what are we doing?
This is the situation in IIT Madras campus. This is
IIT Madras. He is living in the campus. I'm living outside the campus now, and so it's better.
Let us be very clear and conscious of limitations.
We will then be able to become really Atmanirbhar. So I don't know whether you heard anything.
No, we didn't.
Or what?
Here, you just
last one line. We didn't hear anything.
The phone, and
so
then
can I quickly repeat? So you don't have to really. So take cell phone. In the cell phone, our value add was 0, 3 years, 4 years back. Today we started manufacturing. Our value add is only 6%. Our objective is in next 2 years, can we make it 15%? The year after there, can we make it 20? Can we get to 50%? If we get to 50%, we will be exporting as much as we'll be importing. If we are going to make 500 million cell phones, we'll also be exporting 500 million cell phones. So with 50% value add, we are actually becoming 100% self-reliant. So I think we have to think differently. We don't get fixated. At the right opportunity, next time something has to be done equivalent of a foundry, we'll do it. We didn't do it in past.
On that note, let us close. We have to systematically look at Atmanirbhar has to be defined in a different context, and with graded optimism, we have to proceed further and get there. And thank you very much indeed. And let me ask Nandakumar to close this session. It was a fantastic tour to how to get our minds, how to get our people activated on this single mantra of innovation. Mr. Nandakumar.
Well, it's always a pleasant task to deliver the vote of thanks. Today, no words are enough to express our thanks and gratitude to our distinguished speakers, Professor Mashelkar, Professor Anil Gupta, Professor Ashok Jhunjhunwala, for their fascinating talks on innovation, each giving a glimpse of their own spheres in their own inimitable style. During these pandemics, when there is so much gloom all around and we move towards a new normal, they have shown how opportunities are lurking everywhere if we only train ourselves to look for them and convert them into a product or service in an assured way. On behalf of ICCW and IIT Madras, I thank all the 1300 plus registrants of the webinar today and for your active participation and for your questions. We're sure that your own value addition would have been tremendous. We look forward to your continued participation in our future events and to spread the word around too. Please also do subscribe to our webpage and our YouTube channel. We will make sure that you get the latest information on what's happening at ICCW. Finally, Professor Pradeep has been an inspiration as always for ICCW, and thank you for anchoring this event so ably, and also Ramya for overall coordination. I think you pulled it off very well today. Thank you all once again. Have a good evening. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.